The Packers-Bears rivalry dates back all the way to 1921. 102 years and 206 meetings, including the playoffs. We find ourselves at a crossroads. Is this the beginning of a new era in the Packers-Bears rivalry? Love. Fields. Look no further than that matchup, if you will, at quarterback to see, where is this rivalry heading? Are we looking at, a resurgence of the Chicago Bears with a rising young star? Or are we looking at another 10 to 15 years of Packers dominance? We'll see the first chapter of that tomorrow at Soldier Field. Starting right there is a good spot to look at these two rosters and see who has the edge at which positions. At quarterback, it's generally a push. While Justin Fields has more actual game experience and game reps, Jordan Love had the luxury of sitting behind one of the best to ever do it for 3 years and develop without the public eye really watching too closely what he can do. He's been in the same offense for his entire NFL career, and I think that's going to help him at least narrow the gap, if there was a gap between Justin Fields and him. So at quarterback, I'm calling it a push between these two positions. At running back, I'm going to give the edge to the Packers. One of the best backfields in the NFL between Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. This tandem is outstanding. Your thunder, your lightning. You're both are effective out of the backfield as receiving options. Both can run the ball effectively, and neither of them is a liability in pass protection either. The Bears have a nice dynamic back in Khalil Herbert and a 4th-round pick in Roschon Johnson, but they're not going to hold a candle to Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. For the pass catchers, especially given some of the injuries, which we'll talk about shortly, I'm giving the edge to the Bears in this one. The addition of DJ Moore gives Justin Fields a bona fide number 1 receiver. And Darnell Mooney isn't a bad number 2 either, if you want to call him the number 2 or if you want to give that to Chase Claypool. Either way, you've got pretty quality options there for the Bears. And they're a little bit more veteran than the Packers group. The Packers don't have anybody as a pass catcher who really has more experience than 2 years, especially if you're not counting on Josiah DeGuara playing a significant role in the pass game. So that's where I'm going to give the edge to the Bears on this one. Moving into the offensive line, the Packers have one of the top 3 offensive line units in the NFL in my estimation. Their cohesive unit across all 5 positions is outstanding. Not to mention, basically all of them have time playing together in those positions as far as continuity goes, dating back to 2022. And then should something happen, they've got quality depth that goes back into that offensive tackle room in particular. And then they've got versatility among the starters who can shift inside if need be. The Bears, on the other hand, have some pieces moving around along the interior with guys like Lucas Patrick moving from guard to start at center based on injuries, and then like Tevin Jenkins being on the IR hurts their interior a bit. They do have some intriguing pieces at tackle, including rookie 1st-round pick Darnell Wright, but how much of a learning curve is there going to be for him, who's a little bit of a raw prospect coming out of Tennessee? Moving along to the defensive side of the trenches, I'm going to give the edge very slightly to Green Bay. Kenny Clark is really the piece that's going to kind of anchor that unit that makes me want to lean that direction more than the other. Both units are very young. The Packers will be relying on 2nd-year, 1st-round pick Devontae Wyatt at tackle, as well as, third-year player TJ Slayton stepping up and playing a bigger role after Jerron Reed and Dean Lowry departed from the Packers this offseason. On the Bears side, again, a young unit, relying heavily on 2 draft picks from this draft class on the interior of that defensive line. Then if you want to look at the edge units that go along with them, the Packers edge unit has extreme depth. And with Rashawn Gary looking like he's going to play this week, that's going to be a big boost, not only from a play standpoint, because it doesn't look as though he's missed much of a step from the training and the teamwork that he's done with the Packers so far, but he is an emotional leader for that team. And he's really going to give that unit a boost along the entire defense, to be honest. At linebacker, it's really a bit of a push for me. You look at the Packers unit, Devontae Wyatt. When you look at the Packers unit, Devondre Campbell and Quay Walker played together last year. And Quay Walker should hopefully take a step in year 2. But the Bears spent a lot of money bringing in 2 free agent signings in Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards. That they look to have, a big step forward in that linebacking unit. So how do they gel and how do they perform together to execute this defense is really going to be a bit of a question mark for the first few weeks. So that's where I'm going to give, essentially take it off the table, make it a push at that linebacker position. In the defensive backfield, I'm going to give the edge to Green Bay. The Bears have a really talented, young defensive backfield, but Jair Alexander is unmatched on the Bears defense. Even Rasul Douglas, probably to some degree, is better than I think everybody on that Bears secondary. Where the Bears have a little bit more of an edge on the Packers is the safety room. Eddie Jackson took a step forward last year after having a few down seasons, and then Jaquan Brisker looks to be a legitimate safety. Coming out of Penn State a year ago for the Bears, he looks like he's going to keep progressing moving forward and is a dynamic player for them, a playmaker even, in that defensive backfield. So I'm going to give the edge to the Packers because I feel as though cornerback is a little bit more of a crucial position than safety, and I think the Packers are going to hope that their cornerback can cover a bit of some of the deficiencies in that safety group. From there, we look at special teams. I'm going to give the edge to Chicago in the special teams department, mostly because they've got guys that have been there doing it for a while. The specialists for the Packers, kicker, punter, long snapper, are all new commodities to the Packers unit. While they've got some promise and talent, both kicker and punter and Anders Carlson and Daniel Whelan have big legs, but accuracy is going to be a question mark, and consistency is definitely going to be a question mark for this young group. The spot where the Packers might have that edge, and probably have that edge, is at kick return with Keyshawn Nixon. But that was one season he was an all-pro kick returner. Not to say that I'm counting him out against that and that was a fluke by any means, but he is looking to play a bigger role in that secondary as a slot cornerback. And I'm curious how much of an impact that's going to have on his kick return ability throughout the season. All right, now that we've taken a look at who's got the edge at each position, let's look at some of the matchups within those position groups. So for me, the biggest one that I'm looking at for the Packers is this young receiving core against this talented Bears secondary. As I mentioned, Jaquan Brisker is a playmaker. Jalen Jackson is a solid cornerback. And then on top of that, the Packers have a lot of youth. As I mentioned earlier, only 2 years of experience for the most veteran receivers on this roster, both of whom are at best questionable to play in this game in week 1. And then on the other side of the ball, the biggest thing for me is how well does the Packers front 7 contain Justin Fields? If we can contain Justin Fields and not let him get outside of the pocket to either throw or run, that's going to be a huge win for the Packers defense. The Packers edges and the linebackers have some good speed, which is helpful for when that does break down. But if we can keep, Fields kind of locked into the pocket, force him to be a passer first, that's going to be an edge for the Packers defense. And if that's the case, I think they're likely to force a couple turnovers from Justin Fields, as they've done in the first 4 games that he's played against Green Bay, in which he's thrown 6 interceptions. But looking at injuries, with Christian Watson being out for the Packers, that's where that young receiving core, that matchup with that Bears secondary is really, going to be strained and going to be critical for Jordan Love in his first start of the season. Look back to 2022 when Christian Watson wasn't in the lineup. Defenses didn't respect the deep shot as much, and it's already one thing that we've seen Jordan Love have, a bit of a struggle in connecting on that deep pass throughout camp and throughout the preseason. So if you lose your number one playmaking deep threat, it's gonna hurt. Flash forward to 2023 though, the offense is a lot faster. So, Christian Watson's a 4.36 guy. Jaden Reed has tested, or at least unofficially been clocked at 4.37 before. And then Dobbs and Toure were both in the mid 4.4s kind of range. So there is more speed on this offense, and I do think that with Watson being out, we're likely to see, I would expect a little bit more Toure, especially he tracks the ball really well down the field, and then he also makes good decisions and good plays when the play breaks down and things go off schedule. So I expect to see maybe a little bit more Toure than we're expecting, as well as guys like Malik Heath to step up and fill some of those boundary receiver roles, especially if Dobbs can't go either. For the Bears, the big issue, as I kind of alluded to before, was along that offensive line, some of the shuffling that has taken place because Tevin Jenkins is on the short-term IR. So Tevin Jenkins being out, they've moved, Lucas Patrick into center. They've got a backup guard that's covering in for Tevin Jenkins. There's a lot of moving pieces, and I think that's one spot that the Packers, young, disruptive interior defensive line can potentially eat. Guys like Carl Brooks in his first NFL game, I think is going to go out there and he's going to be disruptive in the reps that he does get. Then looking for Devontae Wyatt and TJ Slayton to show, continued progress that they've shown throughout training camp in the preseason on that interior as well. And I think that's another thing that if we tie that back to containing Justin Fields, if we can keep him within the pocket and then we're getting a good push up the middle of that offensive line, he's going to be having a rough day back there as a passer. We just need to be sound in our rush lanes and contain Justin Fields in that aspect. But that interior offensive line is one of those areas that I would expect Green Bay certainly to attack, even including blitzes if it comes to that, as they are looking to be a bit more aggressive this season, it seems, on the defensive side of the ball. I wouldn't expect a lot of man coverage though, because you don't want your defensive backs turning their back to Justin Fields, because if things do break down and he escapes, you don't want there to be a huge gap for a guy with his speed and dynamic running ability to just be able to gash you. And that brings me to some of the key players in this game. So I think for the Bears in particular, Justin Fields is that key player. Their offense is going to probably live and die by how well he performs. I expect them to be able to run the ball pretty decently with the running back group that they've got, but everything is just enhanced by how well he performs. If he can show that he's progressed enough as a passer to make defenses respect him from the pocket, that's going to be a big boon for the Bears offense. On the Packers side of things, for me, I'm looking at Luke Musgrave. Mentioned that Christian Watson's out. Mentioned some of the guys that I expect to take a step forward on the receiving core in his absence. But another guy that is fast and just a freak out there, and a matchup nightmare, is Luke Musgrave. If anything that we've learned throughout this training camp and this preseason is that the Packers expect to feature Luke Musgrave. And when you take one of the top targets out from the lineup, or maybe even two if Dobbs can't go, expect that Luke Musgrave is going to see a bulk of action and a lot of targets from Jordan Love, especially as he's looking to attack the middle of the field a bit more than Aaron Rodgers did before. And lastly, my prediction for who's going to win this game. I've got the Packers winning this by a score of 27-20. I think it is going to be a close-fought game, and it is going to come down to, a lead change or a last-minute score in the fourth quarter. That's going to be the differentiating factor. But I think a big part of this is going to be The Packers defense, I expect to force a turnover or two. And as long as the Packers don't get out to, a deficit early on and Jordan Love doesn't have to feel that pressure, the Packers will rely on the consistency of that running attack. And that's going to keep them on schedule and in this game. And it's really going to shorten this game, taking opportunities away from Justin Fields to make dynamic plays.